In every corner of the world, there are secrets. Stories that exist beyond logic, beyond reason. Stories that don't want to be understood, only experienced. Tonight, we return to those places. Places where space bends, where shadows are alive, and where darkness never truly ends. Welcome to Dynamic Dark. Welcome to a brand new horror episode. Welcome to episode 70. Welcome to season 2 of Dynamic Dark. I'm Aditya, and today I bring you 3 terrifying haunted stories. New stories, new week, new fear. In our last episode, episode 69, we explored haunted horror creepypasta tales that left many of you unsettled. If you missed it, the link is in the description below. Make sure to check it out. And now, let's begin episode 70. If you are new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you dare to see what comes next. Tonight, we'll explore 3 chilling stories, each one more disturbing than the last. The first story is The Grand Stair Hall. The second story is The Assembly Hall That Never Ends. And the third story is The Storage Vault with Infinite Rows. If you love horror like this, then you're in the right place. Because only on Dynamic Dark will you experience classic creepypasta style horror, blended with psychological fear and haunting, unexplained darkness. For the best experience, put on your earphones or headphones. Let the silence, the suspense, and the shadows consume you. And if your room lights are on, turn them off for a more cinematic and terrifying experience. Now, let's begin today's first story. The Grand Stair Hall Smiling Face with Holes. I'm Alex. I entered a hall bigger than any building I've ever seen. At first, it felt almost ordinary. The staircase in the center was simple, wide, made of cold marble, and perfectly symmetrical. But the moment I stepped in, a strange heaviness settled in the air. My footsteps echoed against walls that seemed impossibly far apart, yet somehow, the sound didn't travel the way it should. Each echo faded unnaturally, leaving an unsettling silence in its place. The hall stretched beyond what my eyes could capture. Ceiling lost in shadows so deep that it swallowed the dim lights above. Polished floors reflected nothing, no reflection of myself, no reflection of the staircase, just a void that seemed to stare back at me. I could feel a slight draft brushing against my skin, cold and unnatural, but there were no windows, no doors nearby. Only this endless expanse. As I approached the staircase, I noticed something odd. The central handrails were perfectly smooth, untouched, yet the edges of the stairs seemed slightly darker, as if shadows were pooling there unnaturally. I leaned closer, squinting to see, and realized that the darkness was moving, or maybe it wasn't. Something in the corner of my vision shifted, but when I turned, there was nothing. Just the hall, still and infinite. My heartbeat quickened. I took a careful step onto the staircase. Marble cold under my foot. The hall didn't shrink as I expected. It didn't feel like I was climbing anything at all. Instead, the space around me stretched, expanding subtly, almost imperceptibly. Every step I took made the air thicker, the shadows deeper. I sensed that I was not alone. Not yet visible but present. Watching. I paused. Listened. Nothing. But the silence was loud, so loud I could hear my own heartbeat thumping erratically in my chest. The staircase before me seemed ordinary, but the room itself. The room was impossible. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, they were misaligned in ways I could not comprehend. My eyes struggled to focus, drawn to points just out of reach, edges that didn't exist. And then I felt it, a prickle of dread crawling up my spine. Something was here, waiting. Not moving, but alive in its own wrong way. I kept moving forward, careful, slow. My hands brushed the cold marble, and I noticed dust shifting at my touch. Except the floor seemed unnaturally clean in other places. The further I walked, the more I realized the hall had no real end. The staircase was simple, yet the space around it was not. Impossible angels, walls that seemed to stretch and contract depending on where I looked. And that presence, it grew heavier with every step. Silent, faceless, looming just outside my vision. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe normally, though the air felt thick, almost viscous. The hall seemed to shift subtly as I moved, as if responding to me, expanding, preparing. I glanced back. The entrance where I came in was gone, or maybe it was just farther than I could see. Shadows pulled more densely in the corners, darker than any normal shadow should be. And then, faintly, in the far distance, I thought I saw a figure, a black silhouette, but it didn't move. I didn't want to look again, but curiosity forced me. The figure was still there, perfectly still. Faceless, motionless. Watching nothing, yet I felt the weight of its presence pressing down. My chest tightened. I realized something I couldn't fully comprehend. This hall, this staircase, it wasn't made for me. It wasn't meant to be traversed. It was meant to contain something. Something waiting. And yet, I had stepped in. And now, I was trapped, or at least, I felt the first taste of that impossibility. The staircase in the center seemed ordinary, yes, but the space around it. It was a trap disguised as architecture. A trap that I couldn't yet see, but I could feel. I took another step forward, hand on the railing, breath shaky, every nerve screaming. The hall stretched endlessly in every direction. I was small, insignificant, alone. And yet, not alone. Something waited. And I had no choice but to keep moving forward. I looked up, and the ceiling had vanished into darkness. It wasn't just high, it was infinite. The lights above flickered dimly, barely illuminating the edges of the hall, and shadows stretched in every direction, longer and darker than any normal light could cast. My eyes tried to track the distance, but the walls seemed to bend, subtly curving, elongating, as if the hall itself was alive, reshaping itself around me. I took a cautious step forward, and the polished marble floor stretched endlessly beneath my feet. Each step should have felt solid, predictable, but it didn't. The floor seemed to extend further with every movement, like I was walking on some impossible plane. My footsteps echoed once, then nothing. No reflection, no rebound, no sound at all, just a hollow, deafening silence that made the hairs on my neck stand up. Fog began curling along the floor, creeping around the base of the staircase and along the edges of the hall. It was thin at first, but quickly thickened, twisting and rolling as I moved. It obscured the edges of the stairs, the walls, and sometimes even the floor beneath me. Shapes seemed to shift inside it, shadows I couldn't explain. I caught glimpses of black faceless figures in the fog, standing perfectly still at the far corners, motionless, but I felt their gaze pressing down. My chest tightened, and my heartbeat raced. I tried to focus on the staircase, the center of the hall, to ground myself. But the more I looked, the more the hall expanded. The staircase didn't feel like it was leading me anywhere. Instead, the hall seemed to stretch further, hiding corners and edges I swore weren't there before. The space around me felt alive, reacting, breathing, waiting. I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming at me to turn back, but I couldn't. My footsteps, now hesitant, echoed again, but this time they seemed delayed, bouncing unnaturally through the fog. Shadows twisted with the movement, as if the hall itself were shifting to follow me. And through it all, the black figures remained, silent, faceless, watching nothing yet observing everything. I realized then that this hall didn't obey the rules of the world I knew. It didn't follow logic, gravity, or scale. It existed to confuse, to trap, to unsettle. And I was already inside its impossible embrace. I froze mid-step, my hand still resting on the cold marble railing. That's when I noticed them, black figures, standing silently along the railings, their shapes just barely visible in the dim light. Faceless, motionless, watching nothing, and yet I felt them everywhere. They weren't just around me. They seemed to exist in the very shadows, in the fog curling along the floor, in the reflections that weren't there. Each figure loomed unnaturally tall, their edges blurred slightly by the thick rolling fog that moved like a living thing across the staircase and the hall below. My eyes darted between them, trying to count them, but the numbers never made sense. The further I looked, the more they seemed to multiply, appearing in corners I was sure I had already scanned. Some vanished when I turned my head, others stayed perfectly still, yet the feeling of being watched never left me. A shiver ran down my spine. I wanted to move, to climb, but my body felt rooted to the spot. Every instinct screamed danger, and yet I couldn't take my eyes off them. The fog swirled around their forms, obscuring parts of their bodies, but accentuating the darkness of their presence. It was impossible to tell where the hall ended and the figures began, the boundaries had blurred entirely. I could feel their presence pressing in, subtle but overwhelming, like a weight in my chest. Every step I took, every breath I drew, made it worse. The shadows stretched longer, the fog thickened, and the staircase beneath my feet seemed to shift imperceptibly, as though the hall itself responded to their presence. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I realized that these faceless watchers weren't waiting to attack, they were simply observing, cataloging, ensuring that I felt their ever-present gaze, and that I understood I had entered a place I could not control. I gripped the cold marble railing and started ascending the staircase, each step echoing faintly, though the sound quickly vanished into the immense emptiness below. But something was wrong. As I climbed higher, the hall below didn't shrink as it should have. Instead, it seemed to stretch, sinking deeper into darkness, endless, impossible, like a void that had swallowed every rule of architecture. My chest tightened. The staircase felt like a bridge over some unfathomable abyss. I could feel the space pressing against me, growing heavier with every step. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the marble, twisting and pulling in ways that made no sense, corners bending, walls curving, floors extending far beyond what my eyes could see. And then I noticed them, the black figures. Faceless, tall, motionless, lining the railings and corners, partially hidden in the fog that now rolled higher along the staircase. As I continued upward, I realized the figures weren't static in presence alone. They felt taller, closer somehow, though they hadn't moved. Their looming shapes pressed against my chest, making each breath shallow, every heartbeat thundering. The fog curled around them and me, thick and heavy, obscuring their full forms but amplifying the dread. The more I climbed, the more I felt trapped, as though the staircase itself was alive, reshaping itself to fit these dark watchers. I tried to focus on the next step, on the handrail beneath my fingers, but my vision flickered with the movement of shadows and fog. The floor beneath seemed further away than before, and the hall below stretched deeper into infinite darkness, swallowing everything I'd passed. Every instinct screamed at me to stop, but I couldn't. Each step made the presence of those black figures more oppressive, their silence heavier, their gaze, though faceless, piercing into me. A shiver ran down my spine as I realized something terrifying. I wasn't climbing to reach something. I was climbing into something. The hall, the staircase, the fog, the shadows, the faceless watchers, they weren't here for me to escape. They were here to contain me, to draw me into their impossible world. My chest tightened further. My breaths came shallow and fast. And yet, with trembling legs and quivering hands, I continued upward, unable to stop, unable to look away, compelled to ascend into the ever-deepening darkness below. Every step I took on the staircase, I felt it shift beneath me. The marble felt solid, yet the space around it was not. It was alive. It stretched, expanded, reshaped itself with every footfall. I realized with a growing dread that the stairs weren't carrying me upward, they were making room for them. For the figures. I froze, hand gripping the cold railing, and looked around. The hall had grown again. Impossible. The walls, the ceiling, the floor. They had all subtly changed. Corners I had passed now seemed farther, elongated, warped. And the figures, they had multiplied. Tall faceless black silhouettes, partially hidden in the thick fog curling along the stairs and hall edges, appeared in new corners, along railings, in spaces that hadn't existed moments before. Yet they never moved. Not a step, not a blink. Just multiplied. My chest tightened. Each breath came shallow and rapid. The fog swirled around them and me, thick and curling like a living entity, reacting to my slightest movement. Shadows stretched and twisted unnaturally. Every instinct screamed at me that I was trapped in a hall that obeyed rules I could not comprehend. Every step I had taken only made it larger, more impossible, and filled with their silent presence. I tried to look up, to find a ceiling, a boundary, anything. But darkness had consumed everything above, and the staircase no longer seemed like a path. It was a bridge over endless space, stretching infinitely into the fog below. Every railing I touched felt colder, heavier, as though the figures were pressing not just from the edges of the hall, but through the very handrails, through the fog, into my chest. I took another step. The fog thickened, curling higher along the staircase. The figures multiplied again, appearing in shadows I had already scanned. My eyes could not track them all. My mind struggled to comprehend their number, their presence. They were everywhere. Silent, motionless, watching nothing, yet I felt them everywhere. My heart beat thundered. My legs shook, yet I could not stop. Each step was both a surrender and a progression. The hall stretched, the fog twisted, the black silhouettes multiplied, and I understood with a chill that this place had been waiting for me all along. The staircase, the hall, the fog, the figures, they were all part of the same impossibility, the same trap, and I had no escape. I continued upward, trembling, heart pounding, surrounded by the endless fog, faceless watchers multiplying, the hall impossible, and the realization clear, I was no longer climbing the stairs. The stairs were climbing me. I stopped. Every step I had taken felt like a lifetime. My hands gripped the cold marble railing, trembling. The staircase stretched endlessly above and below me, yet I hadn't moved forward, not really. I looked around the hall, and the shadows of the fog seemed thicker now, curling unnaturally along walls and floor, wrapping the space in an almost living mist. The tall, faceless black silhouettes were everywhere. Along railings, in corners, in spaces that hadn't existed moments before. They hadn't moved, not a single step, yet their presence pressed into me from every direction, heavier than the air itself. My chest tightened. I tried to take a breath, but it felt shallow, trapped, like the fog itself had filled my lungs. The hall below, above, and around me seemed to pulse subtly, expanding and contracting with some unseen rhythm. Every echo of my footsteps was swallowed immediately by the void. I realized with a shiver that the space was alive. Aware of me, shaping itself around my fear and ensuring that I felt its immensity and impossibility. I tried to turn back. The staircase behind me had elongated, the hall wall. Every railing and wall I remembered had subtly shifted. The fog rolled in thicker waves, partially obscuring the silhouettes but amplifying their weight and menace. They didn't need to move. Their stillness was enough to make me feel watched from every corner, every shadow, every curling swirl of mist. My heartbeat thundered, and I realized I could not run. The space itself was holding me, folding around me, feeding on my fear. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And then it hit me, the hall, the staircase, the fog, the figures, they weren't just present. They were the room itself. I wasn't trapped by walls or doors. I was trapped by the very existence of this impossible place. I fell to my knees, hand pressed to the railing, fog swirling around my face. Every instinct screamed escape, but there was none. The silhouettes remained perfectly still, their presence absolute, faceless, infinite. And in that suffocating stillness, I understood the terrifying truth: the room will never let me leave. I exhaled shakily, realizing the hall, the fog, the black figures, and the staircase had become one impossibility, a prison woven from darkness, silence, and the watching eyes of nothingness. There was no escape. Not ever. The second story is The Assembly Hall That Never Ends. I'm Mia. The moment I stepped through the doorway, a chill ran down my spine. The hall stretched farther than I could see, as if it had no end. Thousands of empty seats lined up in perfect rows, fading into darkness, each one identical to the last. The polished wooden floor reflected nothing, and the faint scent of dust and old wood hung heavy in the air. A single dim light flickered weakly on the stage at the far end, but the stage itself was empty. No one moved. No one breathed. The silence pressed against me like a physical weight. I took a tentative step forward. The echo of my footsteps sounded distant, muted, and then nothing. The hall swallowed the sound. Thick fog began curling along the aisles, creeping slowly across the seats. It moved as if it were alive, flowing in the gaps between the chairs, reaching toward me with a cold, intangible touch. And then I noticed them, tall faceless black silhouettes, motionless, standing silently at the far corners, partially obscured by fog. They weren't on the stage. They weren't in the seats. Yet I felt their gaze on me, omnipresent, waiting, patient. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped closer to the stage. The rows of seats seemed endless, vanishing into the darkness beyond the fog. Every instinct screamed that this hall was impossible, that its scale wasn't meant to be comprehended by human eyes. Yet I couldn't look away. The black figures didn't move, didn't blink, and didn't speak, but the air around them vibrated with their presence. I ran my hand along the back of one of the seats. Cold. Solid. Yet the hall shifted subtly as I moved, expanding, stretching, as though the building itself was alive, shaping itself around the unseen watchers. Shadows deepened, fog thickened, and the dim light on the stage flickered again, emphasizing the emptiness and the growing sense of dread. I tried to focus on something familiar, something grounded, but there was nothing. Just endless rows, the fog curling, and those black faceless silhouettes, waiting silently, watching me, multiplying imperceptibly as I stepped forward. My heartbeat quickened. Every sound, every movement, every breath seemed amplified in the impossible scale of the hall. The further I walked, the more I understood the terrifying truth. This wasn't a hall built for people. It was a place built to contain the impossible, a stage for entities I couldn't name, and I was already a part of its audience. My chest tightened, my legs trembled, and I realized this hall was endless, the fog alive, and those black silhouettes would be with me as long as I remained within its impossible embrace. I walked toward the stage. Each step echoed faintly, then faded into an unnatural silence that pressed against my ears and chest. The hall didn't shrink as I advanced, it only grew, stretching endlessly in every direction. Thousands of empty seats lined the aisles, fading into darkness, rows multiplying beyond comprehension, their polished wooden surfaces cold and unwelcoming. The faint light above flickered weakly on the stage, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor, but the stage itself remained empty. No movement. No sound. Only the oppressive weight of emptiness. Thick fog began curling along the aisles and stage edges, moving like it had a will of its own, flowing through the gaps between seats, brushing against my legs with a cold, tangible touch. And then I noticed them. Amorphous faceless black silhouettes, partially dissolved into the fog, some hovering above seats, others merging into shadows along the walls. They didn't move, didn't blink, didn't speak, yet their presence pressed down on me from every corner, omnipresent, patient, and watching. I tried to focus on the stage, tried to ground myself in something real, but the hall refused. Every row I passed seemed to multiply behind me, disappearing into darkness, while the silhouettes quietly multiplied too, appearing in places I had already scanned. The fog thickened around me, curling higher along the seats, flowing with every step, wrapping the space in a living, breathing presence that felt impossibly aware of me. My footsteps grew heavier in my mind, yet the hall swallowed the sound again and again. Shadows deepened unnaturally along the aisles and under the fog, twisting around the black silhouettes as though they were extensions of the entities themselves. The air felt thick, the coldness seeping into my chest. I ran a trembling hand along a seat back. Solid. Real. Yet the hall subtly shifted as I moved, expanding around me like it was alive, reshaping itself with every step I took. I stopped for a moment, heart pounding, fog curling around my knees and ankles, the black silhouettes still silently watching, still multiplying without moving. I realized then with a chill that the hall wasn't just endless, it was alive. It observed, it waited, and I was already trapped inside its impossible scale, every step I took only feeding its quiet, patient hunger. I noticed them. At first, I thought they were just shadows, tricks of the dim light, shapes formed by distance and fog. But as my eyes adjusted, the truth settled in slowly, painfully. Black figures stood motionless between the rows of seats. Some were closer than I expected. Others stood far back, barely visible, half dissolved into darkness. A few were on the stage itself, standing where performers should have been, perfectly still beneath the flickering light. They had no faces, no features. Just tall, elongated silhouettes, darker than the shadows around them, as if light refused to touch them. They didn't move. They didn't react to my presence. They didn't even seem to acknowledge each other. Yet the moment I became aware of them, a crushing sensation pressed down on my chest, like invisible weight settling into my lungs. The fog thickened between the rows, drifting slowly around their legs, rising and falling as though it breathed with them. Some figures seemed incomplete, their edges blurring into mist, their forms stretching unnaturally upward. Others stood perfectly defined, solid and absolute, impossible to ignore. I turned my head slowly, scanning the hall, and realized they were everywhere. Between the seats, along the aisles, on the stage, at the very back of the hall, where the darkness swallowed detail. They weren't watching the stage. They weren't watching each other. Their heads, if they could even be called that, were angled in no clear direction. And yet, I felt their attention lock onto me all at once. Not through eyes, not through movement, but through presence. A silent, suffocating awareness that made my skin crawl. I took a step back. The sound of my foot barely registered before vanishing. The figures didn't follow. They didn't need to. The hall itself seemed to hold me in place. The fog curled tighter around my legs, the shadows deepened around the silhouettes, and the distance between the rows felt smaller, compressed, as though the space was closing in without moving. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure it would echo, but it didn't. Nothing echoed anymore. The hall had decided what sounds were allowed, and my fear wasn't one of them. I tried to count the figures. 1, 2, 3. Then I lost track. Not because they moved, but because there were suddenly more than before. Places I had already looked were no longer empty. Corners that had been clear moments ago now felt occupied, heavy with silent forms. The fog made it impossible to tell where one ended and another began. My breathing grew shallow. The air felt thick, almost resistant, like it didn't want to enter my lungs. The figures remained motionless, faceless, silent. But the pressure of their presence intensified, vibrating faintly through the hall, through the seats, through the floor beneath my feet. And that's when I understood something far worse than fear. They weren't here to chase me. They weren't here to scare me. They were here because this hall belonged to them. And I was the only thing inside it that didn't. The stage seemed farther than before. I stopped, confused, staring at the dim light as it flickered weakly in the distance. When I turned back, the rows behind me had stretched impossibly far, multiplying into darkness and fog. I walked faster, but the hall only grew larger, wider, deeper, as if breathing around me. Every black figure I passed felt taller than the last, their faceless forms looming closer without moving. The air grew heavier, colder, and I realized the space wasn't changing by accident. The hall was expanding, making room for them. I tried to stop, but the hall didn't care. The moment my feet froze, the space around me kept expanding. With every step I took, more rows appeared, unfolding endlessly into darkness. The fog thickened, swallowing distance and depth. The black figures never moved, yet their numbers multiplied silently, filling aisles, corners, and shadows I hadn't seen before. They weren't surrounding me. The hall was creating them. I turned back once, just to check. The hall behind me was larger than before, far larger than it had any right to be. Rows of seats stretched endlessly into darkness, swallowed by fog and shadow. The air felt heavier, thicker, like it didn't want me to breathe. Ahead, the single light on the stage flickered weakly, struggling to stay alive. For a moment, everything felt still. And then it hit me. This hall was never meant to be escaped. It wasn't growing to trap me. It already had. And the third story is the storage vault with infinite rows. I'm Leela. The moment I stepped inside, the vault swallowed me whole. Endless rows of metal shelves stretched beyond sight, disappearing into darkness. The air was icy, the silence heavy. And it felt like the space was closing in around me. I walked down the nearest aisle. With every step, the metal shelves felt taller, heavier, closing in above me. My footsteps echoed once, then vanished completely, swallowed by the wall. There they were, black, faceless figures standing at the end of each row, perfectly still. Yet their presence pressed against me, heavy and unavoidable. I tried to count the rows, but the numbers stopped making sense. Every turn revealed more shelves, and more black figures waiting. The vault felt alive, reshaping itself around me. No matter where I went, the black figures remained at the ends of every row. They never followed me, yet they were always there, waiting. The vault added new aisles faster than I could walk, unfolding endlessly around me. Every turn revealed more shelves, more shadows, more silent falls. And then I understood the truth. The space wasn't endless for me. It was endless for them. I froze where I stood. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. I just listened. My footsteps, once sharp and metallic against the floor, faded completely, as if they had never existed. The silence closed in around me, thicker than the cold air filling my lungs. I looked down the aisle in front of me, and then behind me. The shelves stretched on forever, perfectly aligned, endlessly repeating. No matter where I looked, the rows continued, disappearing into darkness and mist, multiplying beyond logic. The black figures remained at the ends of the aisles, unmoving, patient, as though they had all the time in the world. I felt small, temporary, out of place. The vault didn't react to my fear. It didn't need to. And that's when the truth settled in, quiet, heavy, unavoidable. This place wasn't meant to be escaped. It wasn't built for people to leave. The vault wasn't infinite by accident. It was infinite by design. And it would never let me go. So that was the end of episode 70 of Dynamic Dark. If these chilling tales and haunted stories made you shiver, tell us in the comments which story kept you awake tonight. The most terrifying comment. I, Aditya, will pin it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications bell so you never miss our next descent into the unknown. And share this video with your friends and family if they can handle the fear. Have a haunted location, creepy encounter, or urban legend to share? Drop it in the comments. The idea with the most likes will be featured in our next episode. Episode 71 is coming soon, where we will dive deep into creepypasta horror stories, uncover darker mysteries, cursed places, and secrets that linger where the shadows never sleep. Stay tuned, keep watching, and dare to explore the terrifying unknown with Dynamic Dark every episode at 7:45 p.m.